Right here in Nigeria, we're hearing that Nigeria must grow 5 times faster than its current pace if it wants to achieve its ambitious goal of becoming a $1 trillion economy in 5 years. That's according to the World Bank in its latest Nigeria Development Update report launched in Abuja, where it disclosed that the country's economy recorded its fastest growth in about a decade in 2024, driven by a strong fourth quarter and an improved fiscal position. Our ICE correspondent Frank Omar Play has this report.
Africa's most populous country, Nigeria, may be facing an uphill task in its quest to become a $1 trillion economy by the year 2030. This comes despite recording its strongest economic performance in 3 years, with GDP expanding by 3.84% in the fourth quarter of 2024, largely driven by the services sector. World Bank officials at the launch of its latest Nigeria Development Update cautioned that while recent reforms by President Bola Tinubu have sparked a modest recovery, Nigeria needs to accelerate its current growth rate fivefold to meet the 2030 ambitious target.
The exchange rate is market reflective and more stable. Foreign reserves have increased. The fiscal position is much improved on the back of a surge in Federation revenues. Now, needless to say, the war is not won. Many challenges remain. Inflation has remained high and sticky, and it will be crucial for the CBN to stay the course with tight monetary policy to anchor stability.
To consolidate on the current growth momentum, the World Bank is also advocating a sustained macroeconomic policy by the public sector and large-scale private sector investment to break away from the cycle of slow growth.
It's going to require continued coordination with fiscal policy. So it's going to be essential that fiscal policy remains disciplined enough, the fiscal deficits remain small enough, that monetary policy remaining tight can kind of do its work, and those pulling in the same direction can restore expectations.
With Nigeria's fast-growing population estimated at 3% annually, perhaps the real test for policymakers is how some of these reforms translate into actual growth. Some of the stakeholders on this panel section, including the Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Minister of Communications, CBN Governor, and Plateau State Governor, took turns to address economic and policy matters.
It is investment that allows increases in productivity, that grows the economy, that creates jobs. High quality jobs that lift Nigerians out of poverty in their millions, which is the aim of Mr. President. So we're trying to go from 7%, or trying to go to 7% growth.
Inflation is still a bit sticky. Or, well, maybe less sticky now than it was before, but it's still elevated. And of course, we believe that if we continue the course of orthodox monetary policy, which you speak about, and which has brought about results, if we're able to continue the course, which we will, then over time, the inflation should moderate.
And this is a sector that has been clamoring for increase in tariff for more than 10, 11 years. In fact, we've seen that in the last 3 years, the FDI to the sector has gone down significantly. So the companies have not been investing in digital infrastructure. And last year, because of the reform, we saw a significant growth. So if you look at the numbers, for instance, in Q1 2023, FDI to our sector was about $22 million in Q1 2023. In 2024, we had close to $200 million just in Q1 2024. And we saw that growth continued in Q2 into Q3 and Q4 as well.
One of the key components of macroeconomic policy that perhaps needed to be addressed in the MDU is the impact of insecurity on the macroeconomy, because it is one of the critical factors that is diverting funds that we would have put into critical investments and infrastructure. We're having to spend a lot to deal with the challenges of insecurity.
Citing weakening oil supply and global uncertainties in its recent report, the International Monetary Fund had downgraded Nigeria's 2025 economic growth forecast to 3% from an earlier projection of 3.4%. But the World Bank, on its part, is projecting a cautious picture of GDP growth expected to inch up from 3.4% in 2024 to 3.6% in 2025 and further to 3.8% by 2027. As Nigeria continues to navigate its economic transition, today's update by the World Bank appears to have set a tone for more conversations on inclusive and growth-targeted policies. But stakeholders here say with policy alignment and genuine collaboration across all sectors of the economy, the momentum for change could become the catalyst for national prosperity. From the nation's capital, Abuja, Frank Omalape, Arise News.
Well, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, might have begun to tighten his grip on the People's Democratic Party following yesterday's resumption of duty by his ally, the embattled National Secretary, Samuel Anyamu. That was despite a meeting by PDP governors on Sunday night, which proposed the way forward for the party amid its internal crisis. Anyamu, alongside acting national chairman of PDP, Ilya Damagum, at the deadline yesterday, submitted the names of the party's candidates for the Anambra State governorship election, slated to hold in November. And they did so to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. Now, the latest development followed an earlier advice by the INEC leadership to PDP executives stating that it would not recognize any correspondence from the party if not authored by Anyamu. Now, the development clearly puts PDP in the grip of Wike, who could swing his influence to determine some of the critical decisions of the party preparatory to next elections. Now, despite the challenges confronting Nigeria, Edwin Clark believed they are surmountable for the unity and development of the country. These were the submissions of Nigerians, including former President Goodluck Jonathan and Governor Duri, at a commendation service for the Federal Information Commissioner in the Second Republic. Ovietemi George reports.
The remains of Second Republic Federal Information Commissioner is received by former President Goodluck Jonathan, Governor Duri, and other Nigerians, including 2023 Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi at the Bayelsa International Airport, Amasoma. Then begins the journey to the Ijo House, a symbol of unity, struggles, and aspirations of the fourth largest ethnic nationality in Nigeria. The hymn ushers in the caskets bearing the Nigerian hero as the pallbearers march into the venue of the commendation service.
We have lost a leader, and I believe God will give us a leader. It may not even be people of our generation that are next to him, could be even people younger. It may not be an immediate succession, but along the line, we'll surely get a person that will give the joyful leadership.
Is it his intelligence? Is it his fearlessness, his courage, his love for his people as a uniting factor, his love for the unity of this country, Nigeria? The Ijaw nation is blessed to have him as a father. He's one man who believed in the unity of Nigeria.
Mr. Clark was the frankest, loudest, and most audacious voice in the whole of this country. And for the vacuous vacuole that he has created, I also pray God to fill it squarely in the Ijaw nation.
There's a huge vacuum, and Iroko has fallen. We are expecting the federal government and the president of the federation to do the right thing by naming and immortalizing, Pa Clark in an appropriate and suitable manner. And I believe that will happen.
A dominant theme for dignitaries at the occasion is the need to immortalize Chief Edwin Clark.
Pat Clark symbolizes unity. In spite of what we have suffered as Ijaw people, the neglect, Pat Clark has always advocated for one Nigeria. He will tell us younger ones that, look, we can fix this country.
The last words that came out of Chief Clark's mouth is, I am in Nigeria. I love Nigeria. Then he paused for a minute and shouted again, I love Nigeria.
If he were still alive, the state of emergency would not have been declared. There are arising more E.K. Clarks, whether they be male or whether they be female. People who will be able to speak truth to power fearlessly like he did.
We had many discussions on unity in Nigeria. If Nigeria is to progress and succeed and become strong, we need to unify. We need to stand together. We need to have one vision, move in one direction.
His photograph remains here in Ijaw House, but his body continues the journey to Kiagbodo, his ancestral hometown. But who will fill his very big shoes? The Ijaw nation hopes that God will raise someone to continue where he had stopped and project the hopes, aspirations, and struggles of the Ijaw people. From Yenagoa, the Bayelsa state capital, Ofieteme George, Arise News.
Well, thank you very much, Ofieteme George, for a fitting piece to send Pa Edwin Clark off once and for all. I think clearly when someone comes to the end of a life well lived, one of the greatest markers of their legacy is essentially the improvement of the lives of the people around him. And just from the small snapshot that we were able to hear from the people in Ovieteme's report, it just shows that he's someone of respected character, someone of esteem, and someone who took so much pride in being in a Nigerian. We heard in the report there that that was one of his final words in this life, on this planet, in this world, that he was a Nigerian. And to hear the young lady there also talk about his presence and how she believed that were he still here, there wouldn't be a state of emergency declared in the region, obviously in another state, but it just underscores the amount of respect that Edwin Clark commanded throughout all different echelons of society. So we do extend, once again, our condolences to the entire Edwin Clark family. And then moving on to different stories, if we take a look at the state of Nigeria's economy today, I do think that many people, despite the admission from the World Bank and definitely from many economic experts that this $1 trillion goal for the Nigerian economy is ambitious, to say the least. But to see the performance of Nigeria's economy, especially towards the tail end of 2024, specifically the final quarter of the year, that was something that constituted so much growth that it did get the acknowledgement and commendation from the World Bank and other global institutions that Nigeria is on the right track. But there are definitely a list of concerns that are still befuddling our economy. Definitely things that still need to be done in order to really set Nigeria's path and create this trajectory to this target if it is supposed to be achieved within a timely manner. So a huge congratulations, I think, in order to Nigeria on that part, but definitely there's so much more that needs to be done. When we're looking at this PDP issue, this is quite confusing because we go back and forth constantly. We'll be talking about PDP and, of course, the leading party throughout the course of the show with both of our guests and, of course, in our newspaper review. But we do know that, of course, the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, did hold a media parley at length yesterday morning, and he talked about his visions, as he always does, for the future of the party and the future of Nigeria. He warned against, quite explicitly, against the zoning of the presidency to the north. He thinks that it should stay southward, and I do think that many people would agree with him. When we look at the inner workings of the PDP party and now the secretaryship of Anyamu and how it's clear that he is still the person who is considered the secretary, the person whose signature needs to be on these documents before they're going to be formally accepted by INEC. It just shows that, again, despite his the shaky road that he's gotten to get to this point, it does seem as though he's standing on far firmer ground. And by extension of that, Wike too is still continuing to be quite a strong stalwart within the PDP party. So we'll keep our eyes and ears open over to what that means for Nigeria ahead of 2027. Minister Wike himself is in quite a unique position, being that he is a member of the cabinet, being that he is a minister and also clearly still referred to as a chieftain of the opposition party. So it's a very unique and interesting position. And Dr. Rubin, as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these stories.
Okay. Paysan.
Oh.
Paysan.
Oh.
Here.
Oh, sorry, again?
Paysan.
Yeah.
I commiserate with the people of the Ijaw Nation on the passing of Chief Edwin Clark, Edwin Clark, 1927 to 2025. Now, the loss is not just for the Ijaw Nation, the loss is also for Nigeria and other persons in this community. Because Edwin Clark was a nationalist, was a patriot, who has left behind a legacy of service, dignity, courage, and commitment to the idea of a better Nigeria. And it is just as well that he's being celebrated. There was a commendation service for him by the Bayelsa state government, the Ijaw Nation, Ijaw National Congress, at the Ijaw House in Yenagoa yesterday. It is well deserving. Now, Pa Clark falls into a generation of persons who devoted their entire life to public service, their entire lives. And in this regard, on this program, in recent times, we have discussed Pa Ayo Adebanjo, an exemplar. We have discussed Pa Reuben Fashoranti, who is still alive, and may he live longer, you know. And then Pa Edwin Clark, who has fallen. So I share the view that an Iroko indeed has fallen, and that the people of the Ijaw Nation and the people of Nigeria deserve to mourn him deeply, because he built bridges across communities in Nigeria. And in fact, his death is also a major loss for us in Abeokuta, Ogun State, because he's our in-law. His wife, you know, is from, I think, the famous Shudipo family in Abeokuta. So, but the point I want to make is in terms of his intervention, his ability for networking and bridge building. Now, he started his political career in 1953 as a councillor in Bomadi in the Niger Delta region. And that should not have been surprising, because he comes from a family of natural leaders. His great-grandfather, Bekederemo of Kiagbodo, was an aristocrat in the 17th, 18th century. Now, his brothers have also down the line in the generations played major roles. He's the brother of Ambassador Akporode Clark, one of the distinguished diplomats during the golden era of diplomacy in Nigeria. He's also the brother of Professor J.P. Clark Bekederemo, the poet. And now, he distinguished himself in his own line. Public service. Apart from being a councillor in Bomadi in 1953, he went on to become a commissioner in the Midwestern region. He was involved in the Ugbemudia government, and then later, in 1975, under the Gowon administration, after having served as commissioner for education under Ugbemudia, he became the federal commissioner for information. And since then, he has been on top of the assignment as a spokesperson for issues of fairness, equality, and justice, not just for his own Ijaw Nation, but also for all Nigerians. And that is why President Jonathan was referring to his courage. Now, In terms of his legacy, he has the Edwin Clark Foundation, which he established in 2016. He has the Edwin Clark University, which he established in Kiagbodo, I think in 2015. Now, I knew him personally because when we were in government, that's the Jonathan administration, he was like the grandfather of everybody, and he was always, offering advice. Even after government, when he tried to advise the Buhari administration, okay, he and I had a very good disagreement. I call it very good disagreement, arguing with each other on the pages of newspapers. But that was the kind of person he was. He identified with one young people, and he could argue with you if you disagreed with him. And after the argument, life goes on. He was also a regular face on this station, Arise News, in those early days when we were still struggling to find, a bearing in this station. He was always ready whenever we called upon him to grant us an interview. And you could not fault him at the level of sincerity and dignity. Now, let me quickly summarize on that, because there's another topic I'd like to comment on. Is that, look, these persons, these elder statesmen, their rank is disappearing. What is more important is the legacy that they leave behind, and how the younger generation collects the baton and continues the relay. In the case of PANDEF, which was founded also by Chief Edwin Clark, we now have a very knowledgeable person, very distinguished diplomat, Ambassador Godnos Igali, in charge. But it's not just for Ambassador Godnos Igali alone to collect the baton and run the relay. It is for young persons, not just in the Niger Delta, but across Nigeria. Well, we wish Edwin Clark a safe trip. And may he find safe landing in the world beyond. Now, to talk about the World Bank report, very quickly. There are certain things that, it's called the World Bank Development Update, I think. The World Bank, which was released yesterday, and we had a detailed report in that regard. Well, the World Bank is saying the administration has done very well by ensuring macroeconomic stability. But the same World Bank said that there is a lot more to be done in terms of ensuring fiscal growth, in terms of ensuring transparency and accountability, and also effective infrastructure development, no, not infrastructure, development spending, they say. And I think that the Nigerian government, we take a cue from that. The various government officials who were there, they were excited that the World Bank said, positive things about macroeconomic stability. Well, they have a reason to be excited because, after all, when they took over from the Buhari administration in 2023, the economy was in a bad place. Everything was practically upside down. One of the things that President Tinubu has tried to do is to stabilize the economy. Now there have been challenges in that regard in terms of, effect on the public, expectations of the public, and all of that. But the emphasis should be on growth. Number two, the World Bank report talked about revenue generation, removal of fuel subsidy. Now, about removal of fuel subsidy earnings, they made the point that the NNPCL didn't start remitting funds into the federation account until January 2025. The truth of the matter is that at the time that the Tinubu administration took over, the NNPCL was in a hole. Now, even oil production was in crisis. In fact, I think there was a meeting that the CFO of NNPCL called where he was saying, look, they were indebted in terms of forward sales and also in terms of, revenue. Now, the thinking among many Nigerians, a lot of people are just ignorant about oil revenue accounting, is that it's not NNPCL that is responsible for revenue coming from whatever is generated. There are other stakeholders, there are other partners. NNPCL does not even collect royalties. Even as we speak today, I'm not too sure that NNPCL has left that hole. But as at October 2024, when we had the full removal of subsidy, they needed to pay off debts. And what is NNPCL's share of oil production? Marginal compared to what the joint venture partners would take, because they had committed to other partners, from whom they had borrowed money. But by 2025, they are now remitting to the Federation account. And that's why those states can pay off their debts. Now, the World Bank report says that 50% of the earnings are paid to the Federation account, but at the NNPCL is still paying net arrears. Now, this is the job for this new management, the Bayelsa new management, to see that all of these issues are addressed under the new dispensation that we have. The president has told the Bayelsa board to ramp up production. We hope that they will focus on that to achieve what the World Bank calls fiscal growth, inclusive growth. Now, the same World Bank talked about budget implementation. It says that the 2025 budget implementation, in terms of the benchmark expectations, is too ambitious. And that is correct. Oil price is going down. Our benchmark is at $75. Foreign exchange, we have not been able to fix it. So, in other words, by way of summary, part of that report that we have seen says there is more work to be done. And in that regard, Mr. Wale Edun, the coordinating minister of the economy, has said that, well, yes, they are busy looking for investments. They are busy, doing a lot of engineering. Yemi Cardoso, CBN governor, also spoke. Minister Bagudu also spoke about, how they are tailoring these things to the Nigerian reality. But what is important is that we need transparency and accountability. We need good governance. And at the NNPCL that was mentioned in that report, Bayo Ojulari should focus on the reform that is needed, instead of what I see that appears to be undue persecution. But I do not speak for, anybody, just to make a point. As for the PDP, well, what the Supreme Court decided is that the party should go back, that's with regard to the issue of this national secretary of the party, and put his own house in order. What we're seeing is a lot of back and forth, within the party, setting up reconciliation committee. Well, I don't know who they are planning to reconcile with. Is it the members of the party who sabotaged the party in 2023, and who seem to appear to be getting away with it? Now, the PDP is a party that has a lot of issues. But what the Supreme Court advised is that they should go and put their own house in order. How they put that house in order, how it works for them or does not work for them in that party remains to be seen.